As part of our 2A history project, here is a blast from the past.
And now, friends, let's go back to Cody, Wyoming, to the Great Buffalo Bill Historical Center and see some more of the exhibits that they have on display. It's just a fabulous, fabulous place to go. I know you're looking forward to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're here in the museum here at the Buffalo Bill Historical Center, and I want to introduce you. This is Simeon Snyder, and Simeon is the acting as the curator here at this time, and we are so appreciative of him taking time. He is a very busy young man because with the massive numbers and the variation of things here at the museum, Simeon is a very busy person. And I will say this, he is one of the most knowledgeable people about shooting and firearms that I've had the pleasure to meet. Simeon, we appreciate you being with us today. We appreciate you bringing us in sort of
my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
The inner sanctum here, shall we say. Well, sir, tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would. How did you get involved in shooting and guns?
Well, I started, I think the way many people started, I started shooting at a summer camp when I was about 7 years old, and actively competing in terms of targets with single-shot 22s. That developed into a love and passion of all firearms, and this job gives me the opportunity to continue to pursue firearms in a professional setting.
Now, Simeon, we're looking at what appears to be a long black semi-automatic rifle. This looks pretty much like a space gun, if you ask me. What is this particular gun, sir?
This is a one of a kind. It's a Winchester prototype. It's actually a bolt-action 50 caliber anti-tank rifle. And this rifle represents an important element of the collection, and that is the collectors who stand behind this collection. Mm-hmm. This was given to us, as a good number of the firearms that I'm going to show you today, mm-hmm. By one collector who saw the importance of this when he saw this collection on the open market. He felt that it was important to keep it together, and he is really the backbone of why the collection exists as it does today. Continuing support from the collector, their efforts to build collections, to obtain rare and valuable pieces.
And put them on display so others can enjoy them and see what the technology produced. This is a 50 Browning, this shoots a 50 Browning cartridge, am I correct? Mm-hmm. That looks to be a 10 or 15, maybe even a 20-shot, 20-round magazine maybe. And this dates from World War I. Assuming you're holding a gun that looks as if part of it is actually cut away. What is that, sir?
This is a Browning automatic rifle, and it dates once again from World War I era. It's Winchester production, and certain areas of the receiver and the mechanism are cut away to show how the rifle operates. Mm-hmm. It has a magazine that has some dummy cartridges in it to show how it functions. But as the rifle functions, the cutaway mechanism allows you to see how the inner workings of the firearm operate.
Now here we have a Browning type 50 caliber machine gun, and again let me show you in reference to the size of these cartridges. And tell me, Simeon, it's on an unusual mount. What would be this application here, sir?
This mount is an M63 mount. It's a Colt Browning 50 caliber machine gun, MG52, and its main use probably would have been anti-aircraft.
What was the rate of fire on these 50s? Now, friends, realize this water jacket is to keep that barrel. I can really see this anti-aircraft fire because, or for anti-aircraft, because one, it would have to shoot long bursts. What was this rate of fire, Simeon?
Approximately, I believe, 450 rounds per minute.
Tell you what, friends, that's serious when you've got that big old cartridge at 50 Browning. Is always a serious cartridge. Notice how it took two hands on the grip here, and of course the rear
mounted frame there for leverage. And there's, of course, you have the butterfly type triggers. Now, Simeon, this particular gun looks like a slightly larger M1 carbine, but that's not what it is it?
No, it's not. It developed out of the M1 carbine project, and if you look at the mechanism, there are attributes to the mechanism that appear to be somewhat carbine-like. But this was a continuation of the light rifle concept. It fired a cartridge, the 224 cartridge, and it was in competition with the AR-15 M16 to be the U.S.'s next light rifle in the late 50s and early 60s.
Now, one of the things that I particularly found interesting about this gun, the magazine, you'll notice, is a little different shape. It's a little bit longer. The cartridge is a little longer. This had ballistics very similar to the 223, and a lot of us didn't know this gun even existed. In fact, in the early stages, this was probably a better gun than the aluminum alloy Stoner system. Wouldn't you agree, sir?
Well, I'm kind of prejudiced, having had the great privilege of spending a great deal of time with the Winchester collection, and more particularly with firearms from Olin Corporation. So I'm probably a little bit prejudiced. But as I pick up this rifle, as I take it apart and look at how it operates, I can't help but agree that this rifle had great potential. And if you look at the ballistics of the cartridge, the ballistics are impressive. It shot an 80 or 53 grain bullet at approximately a muzzle velocity of 3,300, which is very, very impressive.
Actually, a little hotter than the 223. And friends, I tell you what, I don't know if Mr. Ruger had a look at one of these, but I tell you what, it sure does look like maybe the prototype Mini 14. If you had just my impression, that's strictly me saying that, and he would have done well by looking at one of these guns.
Actually, Bill has been out to the collection and spent time looking at it on many different occasions, and this is something that he had personally asked me to pull out from the stacks so that he could have a hands-on.
How about that? Well, I tell you what, it was a good move. Obviously have here is some sort of belt-fed machine gun, full auto gun. What is this, sir?
This is a Stoner SAW, and it is belt-fed. One of the great advantages to the Stoner, it was developed by Eugene Stoner, who was the father of the M16. But one of the great things about this rifle system, or this weapon system, is its versatility. You can take the same receiver, flip it over, change parts, put a 16-inch barrel on it, and a foldable stock on the same receiver, and go from a SAW to a CAR, which great versatility.
Well, it will actually take a box magazine, is that correct?
Yes.
When you literally turn the gun over.
You literally turn the gun over and turn the receiver over to do this. This weapon was very well thought of by the SEALs, who used it extensively. In fact, I'm told they used them until they wore them out.
Really? SEALs in Vietnam especially, so it must have been Vietnam was some of the more harsh conditions that guns have to operate in. So you've got a carrying handle here, and not a lot of us have ever seen one of these Stoners, and I don't know why it wasn't pursued, because a lot of people felt like it was an awfully good system.
One of the things too, you can see the very light weight, which has a good feel to it too.
And that is a detachable bipod, which we saw earlier. Just a very fine system.
Stay tuned for more of the Shootin' Show after these important messages.
Simeon, this looks a lot like a Johnson rifle, but it certainly has some different characteristics. Tell us about that, sir.
Yes, this short rifle, as well as these light machine guns down below me, are part of Mr. Johnson's factory collection and his prototype collection. I have a large number of Johnsons already on display, and these are the selective fire Johnsons. But the interesting thing about the Johnson is the connection that it has towards later weapons. In a lot of ways, it really was a weapon system that was ahead of its time. The way in which the bolt recoils back into the stock. If you look at this one in particular, the bullpup nature, where the receiver is actually quite close to your head, giving it a short overall length, but at the same time not losing the overall length of the barrel, which is the same as on the much more familiar model 1941 rifle. The barrel length itself is the same. This is selective fire. Just a very interesting weapon, and it's wonderful to have as many of the Johnson prototypes back together again as possible.
Well, now the Johnson, it had this sight because it was used as a long range for long range volley fire or something, because that's why the front sight is so tall on this particular, because they had, or the tangent sight probably went out to what, 1,500 yards, maybe even up to 2,000 yards or so on this. This
one is set up to 10,000 or to 1,000 yards,
right.
But a lot of it had to do too with its inline nature. If you have an inline rifle, you have to have the sights projected above that. If on most rifles you have more of a lower stock setting, and the second you go up, you have to compensate for that.
This is one of the more unusual looking pieces that I've seen yet. What in the world is this?
This is the Winchester Liberator. It's a 4-barrel shotgun. Very familiar looking outline. It looks very similar to the Sharp's 4-barrel pistol of the 1850s and 1860s.
Just on a much grander scale.
On a much grander scale. It was originally developed with paramilitary applications as well as police force and guard use in mind. It was not a great success. It did not go into large-scale production. But it's wonderful to have several of the early prototypes and examples preserved here in this collection for people to study and people to continue to enjoy today.
Well, I don't know what kind of accuracy. What is it? This looks like what, a 12 gauge with what, about 14 or so inch barrels? I'm just guessing now.
Yeah, that's approximately the dimensions that we're talking about here. This one actually has 2 pistol grips, a 4M pistol grip as well as a rear. But there are examples in the collection with folding stocks as well. That would greatly enhance its uses.
Well, notice it has very rudimentary sights, because we're talking essentially point blank type application for a gun like this, and it has a rotary firing pin, a rotary hammer. Which one is it?
It's a rotary firing pin, which once again is very, very similar to the Sharps in the way in which it operates. And a lot of times, if you look at firearms development can be as simple as finding out what has worked in the past and adapting it to today's uses.
Stay tuned for more of the Shootin' Show after these important messages.
Now, friends, here's the most interesting portion. This is the Airgun Exhibit. And of course, we have air guns here, if you're following me with the camera, of the 20th century, but believe it or not, air guns have been around for many, many years, even centuries. And these are air guns of the 19th century. And remember that Lewis and Clark, the expedition actually carried an air gun along with their party that was exploring the American West. And here are a couple of guns representative of the Lewis and Clark era. And believe it or not, friends, see, no new ideas hardly under the sun, right? The reservoir for air was actually in the stocks here.
And you can see how this was a container for air. And here's another one, a large, a thicker stock, and that's where the air was. And what they did, literally, they carried a pump, and let's see, I think we have an example of the pump. Here's another air storage unit here, this bulb underneath the gun. Several examples of early air guns. Realize that all you had to have was a projectile and compressed air, and this was a pump, and you could pump these things up, and they gave you several shots. Now, velocities weren't terribly high, but it beat the heck out of having no gun at all, and they were useful for taking small game. And remember, all you had to have was compressed air, and you had your pump there, and you had some projectiles. You actually had a working arm. Friends, another great example here in the museum, we have a mid-19th century arms factory, and this is equipment actually donated by Savage and Marlin Firearms. And they have all sorts of lathes and machine tools here, and actual pictures of them being used in the original factories. But you'll notice here we have drill presses and things, and you see these belts that are running from these drill presses.
Friends, we've run out of time again for this fabulous museum, but I'll tell you, it was a great trip, and we appreciate their staff's help.
So let us know what you think. We'll be watching the comments wherever you find the video, over on gunstreamer.com or on guntube.org. Thank you for supporting our projects. If you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, check out our Patreon channel.
The guys and gals of gunwebsites.com encourages you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every day. Thank you for watching gunwebsites.com.